I just suck at sinking.
I can never get when he gets there. It never gets synced.
Grind, dude. I gotta grind podcasting hours.
That way you'll get the XP, and then you'll finally be able to sync on instinct.
And then they'll respect me.
And then finally they'll like the podcast. Hey, Abe, speaking of liking the podcast, I would like to tell the audience what happened to me not 7 minutes ago.
7
minutes ago, I received your outline. By the way, we write outlines for this show because we do a little bit of research for it. Obviously,
I write like scripts.
You do, you do. I admire that,
which is hilarious because I'm like word salad still. So
yeah, it's in your, but it's the way you think. It's a clear organization. When you see it written, it's like, oh, I see what you're getting at.
Very kind way of saying your brain don't work good. Very kind.
Very true.
Yeah.
So not 7 minutes ago, I got Abe's outline, and the title of it is, and I laughed out loud, Age-Old Question, is Blast from the Past Demolition Man?
That's a good question.
I have no idea what the fuck that means, but I was thrilled, like immediately thrilled by that title. I hope you put it as the title of the episode because why not? Are you gonna?
I mean, am I? I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. That's a long title. I wrote it just kind of for you because I have to label it something.
Well, I was thrilled. Much more thrilled with the title than the movie you're going to discuss. If not to be negative,
yeah, you didn't like this movie.
I didn't like this movie, no, and I think I might have seen it before. Like, it seems like the kind of thing.
That's always a good sign.
It seems like the kind of thing the Ganser family might have rented to like have a family night. Although it came out in '99, so I don't know for sure. I would have been around 18 or 19 at that point. Blast from the Past is the movie we're going to talk about today, which this is. This is definitely now true of even this movie, that is a blast from the past. But it continues Abe's well-documented renaissance, his love affair with Brendan Fraser. You love him so much. You love him.
What's not to like?
He's it's really clear to me when you watch his old movies why he had a big moment. Like, he was very good for a while.
Yeah, that late 90s.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
I'm kind of bummed that I feel like he could have had a longer go. Like, I feel like he could have done 10 more years in that spot, and I don't know why he didn't.
Everyone in the world agrees with you. That's not a crazy opinion.
No, so why didn't it?
That is an obvious opinion.
Yeah, I didn't think it was a hot take.
Because life is a tragedy sometimes, my friend.
I mean,
because sometimes we don't get what we want. The world doesn't get what it wants.
Yeah, isn't that exactly what suffering singer of the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, sings from time to time? Hey,
from time to time.
Hey, but for real though, I also am enjoying this fat renaissance. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I'm loving this. Yeah. Like the big giant Brendan Fraser gained weight and he doesn't care situation. Oh, yeah. I'm loving that. Are you?
I mean, he's living his life, man. He gets to do what he wants. He's doing roles and stuff though. Doesn't he have like a movie coming out?
Well, he was in that Soderbergh
Doom Patrol.
Yeah. He's in Doom Patrol. He was in that Soderbergh noir joint. He wasn't the main character in it, and the name of it just flew out of my head. Maggie turned me onto it, and I really liked it. It was last year, and I'm looking it up as we speak.
He's been doing some stuff.
Yeah,
he's got a little renaissance going.
Yeah, well, I like what he's doing right now. I hope that he continues to do it.
He's good. He's good.
Yeah, and he's great. And like,
all bits aside,
this isn't a movie without him. I mean,
it's not a movie without him.
He's the entire idea. No Sudden Move was the name of the movie that I was thinking of.
Well, there you go.
He's in it, and he's good in it. It's an unusual role for him. So, so Abe, hey, how you doing, baby doll?
This is Directorpiece Theater. I'm Abe. That was Adam.
I was Adam, yeah.
I feel like we have to. It has to be on like the written record, or like, what is this? This is just like, what did you listen to today when you ran? Oh, just a conversation between two meandering idiots. You know, like, I don't know. You got to put a title on it.
That's true.
That makes it official for me.
They need names, otherwise it's every podcast.
Or, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Fuck it. Nothing
I don't know.
matters.
I mean, I don't know. When you listen to My Favorite Murder, are you waiting for them to introduce themselves so you know you're a murderino or not?
I don't listen to podcasts, Adam. You know this.
I know, it set you up for it.
Yeah, you just out to just tarnish my good name with just details about me. That's what you do. You just say details about me.
I do that
to the world.
I do that,
and let the world come to their own conclusions. And inevitably, Abe is no good. That's what you're saying. That's what you do.
Are we referring to the fact that I brought up Feed the Chicken? Are we referring to that?
God damn, I fumbled that. Let's not. That's inside baseball, dude. Look, we have crazy rich like lives.
Yes, we do.
Everybody,
we really do.
Where there's like in jokes and stuff. Just believe me. But I don't know, man. You don't
want to talk about Feed the Chicken? You don't want to talk about that?
Well, just some random reference to us going to film school together, and I'm like here describing it on a stream because like, hey, Abe, what's Feed the Chicken? Adam said Feed the Chicken is something you could tell me about. And I'm like, oh my God.
But loved it.
This is like an 18-tier story of like why, like it's also like ultimately
not about
you had to be there moment.
It really is.
So
that's accurate.
So like, fuck you, man.
Yeah,
You're the greatest.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite stories to bring up that I know only you and I will have enjoyed it at the end.
Yeah.
But I love it for that reason. And anyway, Blast from the Past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Sure.
God, stupid jobs, huh? Did you know that Blast from the Past came out like 3 months before The Mummy? Did you know that?
That is shocking. Legitimately shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I thought you liked that.
Because I think of The Mummy as being like his second big role. And I keep forgetting, oh no, he was in a bunch of movies after Encino Man and before The Mummy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have like BC and AD.
Right,
you know?
Yes.
So where does this fall into the timeline? So I did an episode recently because you're wondering why maybe this title has Demolition Man. And I don't know.
I hope so.
I talked about in that episode. I talked about how the director used things like color, lens size, screen directionality, diagonal lines, stuff like that. Like real cool shit.
Mm-hmm. So cool.
But ultimately, it was like, let's talk about how the filmmaking of these like sections of the film show the philosophies of two different worlds in the movie, and then it culminates into the blending of like this two worlds. And that last part is the key part when we have to ask the question to ourselves, as we inevitably do, and we have to answer for our children, is Blast from the Past Demolition Man? I also did a episode on The Wedding Singer. It was the first episode we did. And we talked about the wardrobe department and set designers choosing colors for the romantic leads and then strategically placing them in scenes to represent their love kind of becoming a thing. And that also was a culmination of the like blending of two colors or worlds. So I like when that happens. It's like pretty simple movie thing, right? We're all aware of this trope. And like, all three of these movies do the same thing. But I never hear praise about craftsmanship for these movies. So this is like hey, did you notice this? Or if you watch this and notice this, wow, these are not movies you think of when you think of like artistic film projects.
Right.
But you know what? They're good. They did the work. Like the departments are very good.
Right. And I mean, I think these kinds of topics are really great for people who want to understand what the craft of directing is. You know what I mean?
Because
like for instance, I teach
departments.
Yeah. I teach directing in film school, as you know, and like this is the kind of thing that you could show a film student and they wouldn't have thought that anybody directed this movie. Like, you know, that it just sort of sprang ex nihilo to your screens.
Yeah.
And then when you break down sort of these things that are done, you know, like that are easily retraceable if you like look for them, they learn about directing. You know, that's what happens. So there's a lot of value to what you're doing. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about color. I'm going to talk about motion in frame and like what frame edges mean, because I haven't really talked about that sometimes, and how like choices really affect the shot. And ultimately just like shot size. So it's an Abe episode. We're probably talking about photography, and that's true. In this movie, the two worlds are 1965 and 1995, if you know the plot of the movie. The DP of this movie shot in Voltaire.
That's stunning.
Yeah,
I literally can't believe that. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Voltaire is one of like 4 Almodovar movies I bought immediately.
Yeah, I knew.
I was like, wow. Yeah.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that, so I had to put that in there just
Thank
for
you.
you.
I appreciate
Let's talk about Act 1. Huh? So I think it's important to note what?
There's a lot of shit that happens in Act 1 of this movie.
Oh yeah, it does like 2 montages.
Yes. Yeah, it's a lot of time. Because it does like
inside-outside montage.
Yes, it does.
It's like several things.
Yeah.
It's kind of important to note that this came out in 1999. Pleasantville came out the year before, and that went like bonkers, you know?
Yeah. That was a very popular movie in a way.
And I just thought it was an interesting note that while this is more touted as obviously a comedy, Pleasantville got like awards and shit, I'm pretty sure. Don't no one fact check me on that. It's basically like a reversal of that movie, because Pleasantville kind of reveals the cracks in the portrait of like the perfect like nuclear family, and this kind of normalized reverence that America has for the specific picture of a family, and it kind of denounces that. It says, no, people, be weird, be colorful. And this movie is about the charm and power of the good old years, which is funny.
It is funny.
Obviously, it's not like all that. It pokes fun at like their antiquated thinking, their like casual racism and stuff. But the movie mainly just wants you to be like, be Brendan Fraser. He's polite. And he's like wholesome, just like kind. And that's true. That's just true so this is not reinventing the wheel, but Blast from the Past. That's the setup, right? Well, actually the setup is like plot wise. Christopher Walken is this highly intelligent prepper, basically from the 60s. And he mistakenly believes that the Russians have dropped the bomb. I think on the day of like the Bay of Pigs or something.
The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah. When in reality, it's just a crashed military jet. So they have to raise their newborn in captivity. And Act 1 kind of finishes when he's like 35 years old and he walks out. Right?
How old was he actually when they shot this?
I don't know, man.
He looks like he's like 20. It's like he doesn't look 35.
Pretty young.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest with you, I've always been terrible at telling like the age of not just people in general, but mainly actors.
But Brendan Fraser specifically.
Well, because his face is a monolith that shines through time in both directions, like a blast radius of a time bomb of some kind.
He's like those squids from Arrival, but for beauty.
Yeah, I just can't tell because they're always so beautiful. And it's just like, nah, get out of town. That like throws off my entire meter of like what a human looks like at, I don't know, 37.
He's like 27. He's like 27, by the way, roughly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think he comes out and they say he's like 35, right?
And then they do a joke about it.
They make a joke about it where they say like, you look really good for 35. He's like, oh, really?
Yeah. I that must be there for that reason. Anyway, please continue.
It's also the year's matchup. Yeah. Anyway, like one of the things that in the bunker, their main form of entertainment is like reruns of like the Honeymooners and such, which I think is kind of apt considering you probably know where I'm going. Their unfinished bunker is basically just a set.
Right.
It was a stage, a studio. That's what's perfect about it. It's designed to be concrete. That's what these things are. It's got like complete with like wall flats that you could just pull out or rent, you know,
which we show him doing at one point to construct a ceiling. I mean,
that's why he's in LA. It makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense.
And the shots do not shy away from showing that like kind of unpainted exterior wall, like just the wood, exposed wood, windows that just don't have glass, power cables that run across concrete outside of the exterior of the home, if you want to, call it that. And so like the filmmaking actually shows the facade.
By making it look like a set. You mean?
Yeah. And there's a few shots they do when they keep coming back. At one point, Christopher Walken like puts his head through a window.
Yeah. Yeah, he does.
They do a lot of really kind of cool, like, I don't know. When I watched it, I was like, there's actually intention here. They usually have like a window that like they shoot through the window, and then there's usually small intersections of wood that like break up the window and make it look like bars. I don't know what those are called. The small intersections of wood.
Like lattice?
Yeah.
Lattice?
Yeah. They don't have to be that small. It's not like, but yeah, they do that kind of stuff and they like restrict it. They make the composition make them look like they can't get out. Everything's prison-like. It's a dollhouse. Yeah.
But they don't do it in that loud of a way.
Not that loud.
Considering how the tone of this movie, it's actually pretty subtle.
Right. But I think that there's some things that they're also doing that when you put it in conjunction with and then contrast to later in the movie, I think you see where they're going. So in that way, I kind of want to look at like during this section, let's talk shot size. In what I saw is all the bunker is mainly compressed by the lens. So as we talked about that before, that means longer lenses kind of at a distance, which is kind of what TV does in 3-camera setups. It's distant, but zoomed in. There's no real wides in the bunker reality, really. Everything is basically a loose medium, like which means like a waist up shot, or it's a close up. And these longer lenses flatten the space behind the subject, which makes it look a bit more like TV, though they don't go so as far as doing like a straight up parody of a TV show or anything. But if you were to say, shoot these shots on a wider angle, you would have to frame for balanced compositions because pieces of the wood, chunks of the pattern on the wall would be the like natural breakup points, right? Like when you're composing the shot. And so you'd frame for them. Like something they always say about if you're distant and wide, you have to frame for the room. You can't frame for the face, or you frame for spaces, not faces. And that's true. That's just kind of how shots work. If you're wide, you're not right up in their face necessarily. Though you can do that. It just, it looks like how you shoot Hunter S. Thompson.
Right. It looks warped. Yeah. Or how every Iñárritu movie looks in the last 10 years.
You typically don't do it unless you're one of those things.
This is a fascinating observation. Because I watched that, noticed it, and thought, well, they actually need to make this bunker look smaller because it's stupidly big. It's like stupid how big it is.
It's very big because they knew that they had to. They wanted to break up them. They wanted to have the camera go inside the space, so they built it like a TV show with false walls and rooms that could switch. You can tell that that's just how they had to do it.
100%. I just didn't even think of that because my observation, and I'm sure every film watcher's observation of this movie when they watch it, is going to be how much fucking space did this guy have to build this bunker? Like this thing's like a football field.
It's a house. Yeah. A house underground. It's like they want us to believe that everything necessary for a house or structure with 3 people, living room, dining room,
a yard,
bathrooms, a yard equivalent. Also, all of the
grocery store,
the power that he drew. Like this would have taken him 20 years alone.
And millions of dollars. Like so much money, even in 60s money. Yeah. They do explain that, by the way. They do talk about how he made a bunch of money, and then of course he's brilliant with investments and stuff.
Yeah. All of his choices, they become super rich because he chose all the stocks.
Right. Well, and
classic
also
joke about the past and the future.
Yeah. Didn't Back to the Future do bits with stocks?
What? Yeah. Well. Yeah. Yeah. They have the almanac.
Yeah. That's right. No, that's all sports stuff. That's right.
But yeah, he used it. Biff used it to. Well, I mean, he mainly just gambled, but then he's seen as like a icon of business. I forget. I got to rewatch 2.
Yep, that'll be the next time. That'll be our next batch.
No, I know what I'm doing later.
That's right.
So yeah, anyway, getting back to, it's less lens size in this section and more field of view.
Yeah.
Which is a distinction. Because the field of view is more plainly to say what you see in the shot, right? Because you can be very far away, zoomed in, vice versa. And lens size is a very specific thing that affects a lot of other things in the camera. But the compression, when by that I mean the idea of zooming in on a composition that you could form by looking at a wall, let's say, and then making sure that you zoom in closer so you don't see the edges of the wall. You know?
Right.
So even though there's this fake reality that exists and they're not scared of showing us, oh, these walls don't exist, you don't see all the stuff. They shoot it like a TV show shoots it. It's fake. They're trying, like the characters, the filmmakers are like, believe this is a house. Nothing's wrong here. Yeah. Anyway, we can talk more about compression later, but
I cannot wait, sir. I'm frothing at the bit. Just
well, I think it's important, and a lot of people
totally
don't.
is. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. We talk about long lenses on this podcast all the time.
Right.
And this specific aspect of long lenses, that they compress the image. That's what they do.
They compress the image, and they make it feel flatter. In the house, like on the walls, there's like bookcases. There's like hallways, plain walls. It's basically your house, but like the breaks in the background are all over the place.
Yeah.
And the frame edges of what these normal shots in a TV show would be crop out in like the middle of the wall, or in the middle of the hallway. So they give this feeling that there's not really any way out. Like they're always boxed in. It's actually really subtle, but I like it only because I know it's not an affectation of like just how they shoot and how they like shots, because they intentionally avoid doing it later.
It's an interesting choice for a director to make, because that's not the only way they could have shot exactly this premise in this situation. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, what would any big time director do? And I can't think of many directors who would do this. You know what I mean? Who would try to recreate a television show, basically.
There's a
with
USC
this
short
setup
in our class, right? What was that one called? In Captivity?
Yeah, that's right. And it was
similar.
like
not the same premise, but it was about as wild, man. They shot it completely different.
Yeah, it was a guy who was basically in a zoo for cyborgs. It was like a human being who was in a zoo for cyborgs, and then they bring him a girlfriend, and like it's like, now you should mate, and they don't get along and stuff.
But it was like all elaborate sets that kind of look like this because it's all you can afford, you know?
Yeah, well,
like these are not huge. They're big sets, but they're not sets you do to like shoot like Hook, you know?
100%. To the credit of this director of the short we're talking about, who I guess we can name. I don't know. Maybe we won't.
You have that power.
His name is Mike Corbel. Great guy.
Yeah.
Very talented director. He actually put together a set of about that amount of complexity on like a $12,000 budget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was
that's tough to do.
Really incredible that he did that. And so it's fascinating to see a director who has way more resources to make this film sort of decide to make it look like that. You know? And then to shoot it on a long lens so that it doesn't look like he doesn't
like
reinforce he doesn't reinforce the bunkerness of it very often.
No. Yeah.
You know, and that's an interesting choice, because I feel like a lot of directors, like imagine if, like, say David Fincher was making this film. You know what I mean? Do you think he'd ever give you a shot where you didn't feel the metal walls? I just don't.
No, you'd see ceilings.
Yeah, ceilings,
and
you'd
shot
see
like Punch
metal.
Drunk Love.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be confined, but like too expansive, belittling the subject. That's what he'd do with his compositions.
Yes, he would. Even your favorite guy, Wes Anderson, would be on a wide lens shooting this exact kind of setup and reinforce the artificiality of it. Right?
Wes Anderson
that's what he would do.
Wes Anderson on a wide lens It must be Tuesday.
It must be a day of the week. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that's what he would do, right?
That's a little Wes Anderson humor for all you Wes heads out there.
We're really doing broad appeal today. I love how big we're making this podcast today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to mention, which will be, I'll bring it up when it's more relevant, but just like in this section, there's a bunch of color, obviously. It's a color film, everybody. But it's like the 60s, right? So everything is obviously pastel paint. The walls, the wallpaper that cover the house. There are these, when you think of 1960s, think Mad Men or whatever. Think of 1960s, non-invasive colors like peach, pale blue, tan.
Yeah,
it's like a very colorful time, you know?
Yeah.
Bright canary yellow, these kind of, that's what the house looks like. So imagine that. Cut to Act 2. Brendan Fraser's now arrived in 1995 or whatever. So when he gets out inside the world, what we see is like fairly typically for daytime exterior especially, because that's kind of how LA works though. So it's kind of, they just embrace it. The outside world is gray and drab and covered in graffiti, and it's not like colorful graffiti.
No. I mean, even when it's red, it's dull red. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I noticed there's not much red graffiti in this film.
Yeah.
Or of many colors. They specifically go to blue.
That's interesting.
I noticed. They have a thing with blue throughout this film. Watch all the blues in the Act 2. It's just have that drinking game. Wow, another blue.
What a time you'll have.
God, I love watching movies. I just noticed that. There's blue graffiti all over this film.
That's interesting.
And there's a lot of scenes that are blue. I think blue is the might have something to do with like the love arc, but I couldn't really discern it.
I felt like they kind of blew out this movie a lot.
The skies are always blown out.
Yeah.
And if it's daytime, it's kind of rough to look at.
Yeah, it doesn't look great.
Doesn't look great, right?
It's not.
I think that's kind of intentional.
There's nothing shot in this movie to look picturesque. Mm-hmm. And it was hard for me to tell, and I don't mean that even in a belittling way. Like, it's not shot in an attractive way. And no. I couldn't tell if this is a director who doesn't like to do beauty photography, or if it was intentional, like you're going to argue, or if this person didn't know how to make the movie look good. It was hard for me to tell. But your first observation has changed my mind pretty quickly, actually.
Just Voltaire, baby.
Well, right, of course. Like, now that I know the DP shot Voltaire, it's like, well, so he knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, they all kind of know what they're doing,
right.
But the question is, did they pull it off, I guess?
Right. Is it clear?
Ultimately, is it clear?
Is it a clear choice? Yeah.
I calls them like I sees them. You'll also notice, though, majority of the exterior scenes in this movie are nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them, because it's about nightlife, it's about love. And night is the time of love. And I don't know. It's they're not very deeply lit. You can do that, but a movie like this typically wouldn't, like a comedy, especially in the 90s. And by that deeply lit, I mean like as deep in space. Like it fades to darkness pretty quickly, and so the background becomes a bunch of like shining lights.
Yeah, lights and smear.
Bokeh is the name of the term you usually see if it's out of focus. But it's just the idea that you see the landscape through black, white, and colorful lights. Also there's a lot of neon and stuff like that they use at nighttime, especially reds and blues.
They got really excited about that, I thought.
I think they thought neon was like interesting. I think they were like, okay, he would be fascinated by neon, even though they don't have a scene in it. Bathing him in neon light and fluorescent light, it would be something in 60 they wouldn't be as used to, or at least a child would never experience. Yeah. And now would be like, oh, okay, now that means that's him out like a stranger in a strange land, a fish out of water, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what they're doing there.
They do a driving sequence with Alicia Silverstone, Eve, and Adam right when he gets into her car for the first time on the freeway.
Right.
That number one scared the shit out of me the way they were driving. It was like that looks very unsafe what they're doing.
Yeah.
As a filmmaker, it looked very unsafe. And secondly, they did a poor man's process, it looked like to me, or a process trailer, but it didn't look like a trailer. It looked like poor man's process to me.
I'm pretty sure it was.
In a studio. And like the red neon light was heavy. It was like, wow, they're really doing a lot.
That's the tendency on stage, because you got a gaffer and DP and they really want to dial it in because they have so much control. And usually what ends up being the product of that is kind of a manufactured image. I think less is more on some of those stage days. But
sorry,
do people know what poor man's process is?
That's what I was going to say. We should define that. Poor man's process, just so everybody knows. So like whenever an actor's driving a car, with very rare exceptions in a movie, there's one of two things is happening. They're either in what's called a process trailer, which means they're being towed around in a ridiculous half car that's being towed by an actual car, and they're faking driving so that it can be shot on camera. That's one thing that can happen. And that's how most of like the higher end driving stuff is done. The other version, and it's the version they teach in film school, is called poor man's process, because you can't afford a process trailer. So what you do is you have a car on a stage, and then you key out the background. So you make like green plates basically, right, behind them. And then you create the idea of movement by sort of bumping the car, with like physically bumping the car and having lights move across their face. So it's literally being like faked in a studio, and that's to create that illusion. And it mostly works if it's done right. You know, like a lot of scenes that aren't even projected versions, which is what they did in the old days. They would project the road behind the actors. A lot of scenes that aren't projected versions look very believable. This one didn't quite, I thought. Do you agree with that? I didn't think the poor man's process looked great.
It wasn't that great because they didn't have to do a lot of it. There was only a few scenes that they really did the poor man's process that way, especially the nighttime ones. So they probably didn't have a ton of stage days and probably rushed it. That's usually what happens, right?
That must be it. Or they had limited time with the actor
not
or
enough.
something.
Yeah, they were like, we could do this in 3 days, and because there's not many scenes. Yeah, okay. All right, that means we have to just kind of crap out the process stuff because that's easy.
But what's interesting about that way of doing this is that as a DP, and to a degree the director, you're sort of deciding what the outside world is based on what you're lighting them with. And then ideally the director and DP find plates in the background, meaning the images that are going to be the actual world are going to match. And I would say they didn't really in this movie.
It's tough. It's tough to match, but
it is. I agree.
You can. There are ways to do it, so you can do the work.
Of course,
know what I mean?
Yeah. It didn't feel like they did this time, but that's a.
I think there's shortcuts. Life is shortcuts sometimes, baby.
It sure is. It sure is.
There's more wisdom. I'm pouring them out tonight.
Yeah, write that down, everyone. Life is shortcuts, baby.
Hell yeah.
Write that down.
Wisdom from Abe.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's this kind of emphasis on more monochromatic colors.
Yeah.
And just given like the highlights and the shadows we were talking about, nighttime and daytime, blown out or complete darkness, with the exception of stark color choices like neons. That's how we represent kind of 1995, especially in the moments where it's like, Adam, you're terrified because things are different. That's what they do.
Right.
It's weird to me. There's a moment where Adam sees the sky for the first time in his life. And the lack of control that gives that kind of like highlights in all those exteriors that we're talking about in the walls. They even look like the white walls reflecting the sun at noon, like that look. Basically the look of boulevards in LA, just kind of trash. They frame in this moment the sky, not looking at the horizon because they're probably in the valley or something, right? I mean, you can. Huh?
They very clearly are, and it's actually a little surprising that it's not a set. Right? That's surprising.
They went location for a lot of it, and that is tough given that the movie that you've made so far, chronologically, has been entirely set.
Right.
So they throw us. It's like Truman Show, and that's how they want you to feel. They want you to feel like this is different now. But I thought it was really interesting that they chose to frame the sky, because the emphasis in that scene is, I've never seen the sky. And they don't show the horizon. And that's always a thing that I think, like, it's weird to me in this movie, is that when you think about captivity and you think about these themes of, like, restraint and restriction and how you can manifest that visually as a filmmaker, I think of frame edges mattering a lot, right? And usually when you show or want to represent something, like when you want to represent a river, you usually put a mountain in the photo, or or a plain, you know, like a meadow or something like that.
Right. You need the contrast.
You need contrast. So like a sky typically needs a horizon. When you think of a beautiful photo of a sky right now in your head.
Yep.
Does it have a horizon in it?
Yes, it does, Abe.
My God. It seems obvious. They didn't do that because I'm pretty sure they were like, it looks like crap. And we're supposed to say, look at this beautiful horizon. Like,
but it's not
cut
like
to just wires.
But it's not funny enough to seem intentional. No. Right?
No.
Like, to contrast this goes way back to a director piece we did a while back. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Ferris Bueller looks outside and says, how can I be expected to stay in school on a day like this? And then it cuts to a bunch
a cloud.
Yes, it's like one cloud, and it's kind of a shitty cloud. And it's really funny. Like, it's like, oh yeah, like those are funny shots of clouds. You know?
A shitty cloud.
It is a shitty cloud. They're like wispy little clouds. They're not good ones.
Adam Ganzer, producer, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, looking at Video Village.
What is this shitty cloud?
Why is that cloud? Get that cloud out of there. Get me a new cloud. We can't make new clouds. Ah, fuck you. You're not a closer.
They with my Asuka. Yeah. No, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like a wispy cloud that makes it funnier. Yeah.
The idea is that, like, they swung for something, couldn't necessarily get it, and they didn't, and that happens.
Right.
But they try to, like, in that moment, they, like, close the iris so it's less blown out for that moment. Like, when he walks through, just so you can see things, because there's more light now, because he's walking from interior to exterior. But it's a moment where we're supposed to be like, wow. And it's just entirely unremarkable. They, like, the color, so they, like, turn it more yellow and stuff. Like, they add in color in post, I'm pretty sure, some color kind of correction. But also, naturally, when you stop down the iris, it actually saturates colors. That's just an effect of lensing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was a funny moment, because it's just like,
so
probably, filmmakers are pretty good at covering their tracks. I mean, obviously not to the point of a discerning eye, but like usually casually people know something is off.
Right.
And it's just funny to look at moments where it's just like, they failed and I know why they failed. And then at the same time being like sympathetic for them, but also just like, you know, fucking get good, bro. Get good. Blast from the past.
It's my favorite thing. I love how that's everywhere to, like, right now at this moment in time. Get good. I just fucking love it.
Well, it's the only thing that Blast from the Past needs to hear from this old guy. That's for sure.
Just let them know how it is. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about depth.
Yeah.
Huh? Shooting outside in Act 2. The actors can, like, move now, like, and they do. The movie has a lot of motion and depth. For example, when Adam meets Eve, which I think we said is Alicia Silverstone. Yes.
Yeah.
The location is kind of stitched together by multiple locations because the movement of the actors is so rapid. Like, these shots are playing better in wides, which reveals more open space, which makes your frame edges feel less restrictive because there's motion and ways out. That's just shooting outside. It's simple, but it feels different from anything you have seen before in the movie, because everything you've seen before has been very controlled and very restrictive, right?
Yeah.
And you're starved a little bit for motion, camera movement, you know, frames that felt like you could leave them.
Right. Right. Like there was more than one way to exit the frame. You know? Yeah. And totally.
Yeah. So he's kind of doing this thing where it's like the blocking of the actors are like labyrinths.
Yeah, they walk around a lot.
They walk around.
They do.
A lot of motions, like putting stuff in trucks, a lot of just idle motion, but also motion in terms of scenes. Brendan Fraser's almost always looking for Eve, and Eve, until the end, where Eve is looking for Adam. Right?
Which they do in like
because it's romantic comedy, you know.
Yeah, they do in like a Taxi Driver-esque montage, right? Like,
good God.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
No, but like, so to reinforce this point, Brendan Fraser and Alicia Silverstone's like big conversation when they really set the ground rules of what their relationship's going to be. Mm-hmm. They do it in a hotel lobby, and they're kind of walking back and forth at times when you would feel like this is when they should turn around and stop and like get stuff clear, and they're not doing that.
Well, they also do this really smart thing where they usually Eve is pivoting or orbiting Adam, because Adam is fine with staying in one place.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's a great observation.
And like everyone else moves around. Even Troy, played by Dave Foley, walks around him a lot at the nightclub scene.
Secret MVP of the movie, by the way.
Yes, kills it.
He kills it, but also, and I say this gently, other than Brendan Fraser, he's the one that believes it the most.
Yeah,
like he's really doing it. Yes, he's really doing it. Not everyone else is really doing it, but he is, and I appreciate that. Yeah,
I appreciate.
Yeah,
you, Dave.
Good on
Foley.
him, Dave Foley. Yeah,
no doubt. Never had a question that you wouldn't nail it. So there's this kind of, and also they introduce handheld and Steadicam, like you mentioned.
Yeah, they did. Yeah,
just to create this artificial motion. So the speed of the 90s is different, obviously.
That's cool.
Later in the movie, there's a dance scene. I mean, this is obvious because this is how you shoot a dance scene. Also want to shout out to the swing craze of the late 90s.
It was more than the late 90s. This is 5 years after Swingers. Roughly.
Yes.
That's like, I mean, I feel like Swingers
2 years after
like
The Mask.
Swingers got it first. Like that was the thing about that movie, that they got that first.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. And then
I think The Mask was really the one that gets the credit, though.
Oh shit, The Mask was before Swingers, wasn't it?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm just being
You're just being hilarious. Just charming and affable.
Is 94.
94.
And Swingers.
It's before Swingers. I think Swingers is 95.
Is it?
I think so, dude. I'm looking it up right now.
96.
96.
Woo,
oh my God, The Mask did it.
We talked about this. I talked about how I was like, it started everything as like a joke, but maybe
it did.
I was right.
Maybe there were 5 cherry poppin' daddies in the audience in 1994.
Nah, there's something that predates all this shit.
I'm sure, of course.
But it's The Mask.
Yeah.
Just tell everybody it's The Mask.
It might be League of Their Own, by the way. League of Their Own had a bunch of swing shit in it.
Swing shit. That's kind of true.
Yeah.
That's kind of true.
Yeah.
Hey, swing craze movies.
Yeah. Hey.
I think they probably, I don't know. The swing all sounds the same to me. Like,
I mean, it is all the same. It's the same.
Riots.
Yeah. It's
and the voodoo daddies, you know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. They all sound like that. Yeah.
But the way they shoot it and they use camera is obviously dynamic and moves along with the dancers. So there's choreography of camera and, bodies moving in space.
The dancing was good, I thought.
Yeah. It's kind of a cool dance, right?
Actually, I thought that was probably my favorite scene in the movie up to that point.
Well, it's because you kind of feel you feel Adam flexing the most, right?
Well, and it's like I want him to be good at something.
Very satisfying.
Because
he's kind of a twerp.
He's doofy. Yeah, for sure.
He's
he's a doofy twerp. Yeah.
Yeah. Even the introduction to the club itself is this like roving wide Steadicam.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it like Boogie Nights, but it does the thing and it backpedals through the space to emphasize kind of the chaos of the nightlife. My basic idea being that there's idle motion within frame and the frame camera's perspective is literally moving in space. A lot in Act 2. Adam's first night is spent in a hotel, and I'm kind of switching to color now.
Sure.
The sequence is interesting to me to note because they switch set deck on you. Before he goes to bed, he has an interaction with the bellhop where the scene's point is how kind and overly polite Adam is. It like puts the bellhop off.
Right.
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 The curtains are drawn and they match the teal green that Adam's wearing. On the reverse side, on the bellhop side, the pink doors and the hallway wallpaper complement the 60s palette, like this pink kind of floral.
Yeah.
If you can imagine it.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up the next day and the sun is bright and there's no more colorful curtains. They have been removed. Also, some of the art on the wall has been removed, and just in general, the white walls just look more bland. And the whole point of that scene is Eve calls him and she's about to like chastise him for being too trusting, basically.
So meaning he thought the hotel was one thing, but it was actually a different thing?
I think it's that he wherever he is, he's this infectious kind person that like brings this warmth and 60s color palette with him. But he's constantly during the movie reminded about the harsh reality of the 90s, and that slaps him back into a place of, but you exist in this world now. And those two things have to confront and culminate and find a synthesis before we can stop this movie.
Interesting.
Right?
So again, that's the kind of thing that reads to me as a mistake. But you're charitable.
The frame. Yeah, maybe I'm charitable, but the frame, like they chose the frames this way.
You're right.
They stuck to an axis to specifically show these things. They removed art deck, set deck, and stuff like that.
I got the feeling that was actually in a real hotel. And I'll tell you why I got that.
Yeah, I think that was location.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I've shot in a hotel, and I can tell you that, number one, you never have as much time as you want. And number two, shooting in a hotel room means you're shooting in a tiny little place. So like everything has to be.
Yeah, it's very tiny.
Yeah, everything has to be tight and carefully orchestrated. A thing I discovered in hindsight in the film I used the hotel room in, and that felt true here. You know, where it's like they didn't really have the space to show the room. So it's interesting then that they would also adjust the art like that. Because I feel like the only reason to shoot in a hotel ever, because hotels are expensive to shoot in, like they're not cheap, you know. So
you have to buy a hotel room.
Yeah, well, more than that, you got to shut down a whole floor a lot of times.
Usually, like a floor.
And that will not be cheap. So the only reason that you would do it is you really like the art decoration.
Yeah, you like the walls.
Yeah, you like what it is.
And the layout.
That's right. And so it's interesting that they changed it.
I mean, they didn't change the walls. Well, they just took stuff down and flipped curtains.
Yeah, I guess that's not that big. You're right. That's not a big change.
But they look at the angles when you see that section.
Yeah.
And they chose to stay on a specific. It's very brief.
Sure.
Maybe I'm wrong about this. I just noticed it.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just it's a fascinating observation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for what I'll say about the rest of Act 2 is like, well, there's two bits and they both involve Eve, because then I want to talk kind of about the synthesis point, right? Where we have these colors that more or less represent these people, or these world views, and how they kind of synthesize. It's an interesting choice that her house is obviously like, it's not like if this was a consistent rigid format choice, visual strategy.
Yep.
It's not like a piece of trash covered with graffiti, right? Because she represents the 90s. Right? It's not that. I'm not saying that. It's obviously not that. It's actually the reverse. It's kind of showing like it's in a strange like symbolism way. Like it's saying that the color palette and the walls are the same as the bunker.
Right.
Literally the same color palette.
Yeah. It tells us...
it's like saying, I'm ready for you, Adam.
Right.
Like it's this weird kind of amalgam of the two. But they loudly say it, I would argue, because the walls that are featured in her place are canary yellow, and kind of this other wall that's a light tan. There's also a lot of lamps that are from the 60s in her home. The only color that they're really missing from the bunker is like that lime green wall, right?
Yeah, I mean
that they love to match Christopher Walken with.
It clearly telegraphs that she is the right girl for him before the plot tells us that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it also
and there's another
looked like a set, honestly. Like that, it probably isn't.
I would believe that is a house in LA.
Yeah, me too. It's giant though. Like it's a giant house. Yeah.
That must be way bigger than you can even see because those rooms don't look enormous, but you know that they have to be in order to get the shots that they're getting, which is the problem with houses on location. You can't take out a wall.
Right.
Okay. The last bit is kind of what I was talking about where, there's this scene where Adam tells Eve that she's his best friend. And it's like pretty along in the story of them falling in love.
Right.
It kind of signals to Eve because the next scene is the nightclub scene that she is in love. She admits it to herself. So it's not like they're starting to fall in love. They sneakily Eve fell in love with Adam. Adam was always in love with Eve. But excuse me. But in the scene that happens, it's exterior. And it's also a portrait of like Americana because there's like a clothesline with laundry out.
Yeah.
And the behind them is the wall of a house, and it's just this very strong pastel blue, which matches what they're wearing. Like his clothes and her clothes are all shades of pastel blues. So even through the neon light nightlife of the 90s and the drab daytime grays that still govern the rest of the world, we take moments to show kind of like the home stage. Like this is where we're at home with the two love interests or in the bunker, that they show this like very controlled color coordination of the 60s. And it returns for those scenes. The reason I think that is important, it's because we have shown in this movie, they have shot daytime exterior all the time, and they've shown it to feel, frankly, uncontrollable.
Yeah, basically.
But here they are in a scene in the middle of the movie where we're trying to signal the love interest thing is happening. Like, that is now equally as controlled as any shot in the bunker on a stage. They really went for it, and they shot it well. You know, they brought the whole show. So, to me, this is as indicative as it gets in terms of saying they know what they're doing and they're doing it intentionally.
Okay.
Because they're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's just, they can do it. They just chose not to.
I mean, to be clear, they are picking locations that are thematically and artistically connected. Like they're doing a good job. Like for instance, they had that scene where he's rollerblading, and the one where he finds the ocean, which by the way, that was one of my favorite scenes in the movie too. Like when he sees the ocean. Also because they had a horizon, so that's to your point earlier. There was a horizon with the ocean. It's like, yeah, it's fucking awesome, isn't it? Anyway, they had the scene in that graffitied up section of Venice, which is literally right out of Tony Hawk 2. Have you ever played Tony Hawk 2? Like they have that exact spot. I've seen that exact spot, which I thought was cool. And the reason is because of the graffiti and the color of the graffiti. Like it's a gray concrete space with graffiti. It's awesome.
And take a look at that graffiti, by the way. It's blue.
Is it? Okay.
In this movie, yeah.
I'm going to check that out.
It's spray painted over. Dude, love it.
Yeah. I mean,
sorry.
I just wanted to hear some Bad Religion while he skated out to the ocean, but they did not accommodate.
Dude. He is shredding, that's for sure.
He's shredding. He's definitely
he's doing quite a bit of shredding.
He's actually
he's using rollerblades, but you know.
I mean, you can shred in rollerblades. In fact, I believe our fascination with the term shred comes from a rollerblader. Yeah, I believe so. The soundtrack on this movie, incidentally, was terrible. Yeah, terrible soundtrack. I know.
Love it.
Yeah, I like it too because it's like, wow, this is a time capsule.
It really is.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
It's like non-iconic.
Yes,
Clueless.
Yes, it is. It's like all the good things about Clueless. They picked the wrong bands from the same time period.
The bands that showed up after because they were late or something. I don't know.
And they were studio produced and gross. Totally, man. Mm-hmm. Yeah, didn't care for it.
Let's talk about Act 3. Let's just get our move on. So mainly in this movie, the culture of the 90s is seen as a regression, right?
Yeah, basically.
It's kind of the same joke bucket as Idiocracy. Life now needs the charm and politeness of the 60s to be saved. The old saves the new. John Spartan saves Lieutenant Huxley. Wesley Snipes dies at the end. you know. So obviously this is going to be another like the middle path is the right path movie. He just needs to get out of the insane 60s mindset of how the world works, and she could be like kinder and more trusting, I think. So this usually makes filmmakers go, we should mix these visual strategies together, right? That's what the narrative is saying.
Right.
And guess what, Adam?
I can't wait.
Do you think they do? They do it. The big one you probably notice is that even before Eve starts, like puts on the show for Adam's parents, like where they like slowly acclimate them to the 90s. It's a very short scene. Act 3, by the way, is like super short in this because it's like, and then they do the thing. Like romantic
Basically,
comedies.
yeah.
But yeah, like they have this little bit where they're like, let's tell them to come out in a few months just because we need to like have a plan so that like Christopher Walken doesn't immediately just say like, no, my son has turned and like run back into the bunker. I'm not really sure what they think is happening, but they think of this thing as slowly acclimate them to the 90s. But even before that, where she's like putting on a performance and like a costume, she's literally dressing in 60s colors and blouses. This is Wedding Singer. You know, if you watch Wedding Singer with Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler, they do the same thing with blue and red or rose.
Right.
Adam in this film wears leather now, and she wears wool now. So that's kind of a way in which the amalgamation occurs.
Also, she looks the best at the end in terms of how they dress her.
Yeah, which that's just rom-com conventional wisdom.
Not always. Right? Yes, but not always. I think this is one of those cases where the filmmaker had the end in mind at the beginning with her. Like that's how I felt.
That could be right.
Yeah, because her outfits up to that point were really, really bland. You know?
It was 90s bland.
Yeah.
It was like black jeans
and like blouse,
and like a top.
Yeah, blazers and stuff. I don't know.
Like a solid color top.
Yeah.
You know, like it was that grunge, baby.
But it wasn't even grunge. Yeah. It wasn't stylish
grunge
at all.
But it's like the influence of like we just wanted like pretty basic colors, and we didn't really care about, I don't know. Fashion's always wild. I can't ever describe fashion. Never take any fashion opinions from me
again,
ever.
If you're casting Alicia Silverstone, I mean, you know, I can't say this for sure, but I'm guessing that most people who cast her are casting her because they think of her as Cher, right? Like that's the idea. And lo and behold, at the end of the movie, that's who she is. You know what I mean? So I kind of imagine that they worked backwards, but I could be wrong.
No, that makes more sense. Yeah. That, like, because she becomes like fully 1960s,
right?
You know,
which is what was cool about Clueless is that she had all this like timeless blending of styles, 60s and 90s.
That's true. Know? They have a mod art phase. Yeah. Is a huge emphasis in that film,
which is a rom-com.
Yeah,
why?
Of course, it is. Who's saying it?
Everyone, fucking nobody. Not in this podcast.
Everyone. Yeah. I got your back, bro. If they're saying shit, I will knock them out.
Thank you.
I'll knock out everyone.
You're going to be my second when I die in a duel.
For you.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Bring the pistols. Yeah, excited about that.
Woo! We're going to die. Near the end of the movie, Adam and Eve must convince Adam's parents to come up, obviously, and the shot sizes become wider. They reveal more of the space. Like, literally, we're seeing the bunker, not with, like, new eyes, because there's not a lot of, like, they don't do a whole sequence. But just in the brief shots where we see them, like, all right, we're going to go up now. It's, like, you see for the first time the height of the frame allowing for, like, all the way up into the ceiling. The interior lighting hanging. The frame edges include basically a way up. And the bunker has, for all intents and purposes, opened up. We get also a shot framing the new Weber place, because they, like, in that time they made a home.
Yeah.
And it's got green It's green pastures.
Almost identical home.
Which would if I was Sissy Spacek, because her arc in this is that she gets stir crazy and goes full Carrie. Now
I wish that's what her arc was.
I mean, yes, that would be amazing. But it's like, she starts drinking, and like, to me, that would be horrifying. That would be like a hell.
Absolutely.
Right? Is that you finally get out of thing and you're just like, I can't look at that wallpaper anymore, right? So
just a word of empathy for Sissy Spacek's character. They don't know what to do with her after they do the one beat. The one beat for her is, and
That's
she
true.
can't hang on, like she's having a hard time.
She's losing it.
And then she just keeps losing it basically for 35 years, but never progresses in the process of losing it. Just the same amount of, man, this is tough.
And all she does after that is, I just need to get out. I just need to get out. And we have redundant beats of that because it's just her will against, Christopher Walken.
Well, again, against sort of the tides of fate that have swept her up. Like she can't. Yeah, she's a victim here. I
don't know if that's not lost on them. I think that there's something that they're saying maybe about the 60s.
Maybe they are. I mean, again, I kept thinking of Mad Men when I was watching this film and being like, wow, they did very different ideas about the 60s.
They're very polite, but they're totally destructive inside. So,
well, there's that. And also, poor Sissy Spacek is asked to do some comedy beats that are just really not well thought out. One of them was...
True.
She's like looking in on her husband after he had a heart attack, and then she gets the drink caught on the closing door. Remember that bit? Yeah. And it was what? Like, it was just one of those bits that was dumb, and like she didn't feel comfortable doing it pretty clearly. And they were like, but she needs to be funny because she's losing it so much. And I was like, nah, man.
Right.
Nah,
man.
Nah, man.
Nah.
Nah.
No, that's astute.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Where was I?
I'm sorry. I think you're wrapping it up here, aren't you?
Yeah, no, there's just little odds and ends if you're following like the amalgam bit. It means it's taken from both buckets. So there's sweeping shots to reveal the house. They abandon the static camera as well, fairly like in the scene where Walken is like sizing his yard because he's going to build a new fucking bunker.
Right.
Like we get these kind of motion shots. Nothing is very telephoto, but nothing is particularly wide. It's kind of what it sounds like. It's in the risk adverse kind of middle place. You do get this feeling of glory from the expansiveness of the frames. Like, they're very alone in whatever space this is. There's no neighbors or anyone, which is kind of funny to me because it's like, definitely take these recluses who don't understand and have probably very problematic thoughts about how society should go. Let's definitely put them in the middle of nowhere. That would be
right. That'll go great. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it will. If I do not put those people in wider society for a while, right?
I mean, if at all, I didn't get the feeling like either of them would be able to handle it.
There's no way they can catch up. They're too old at this point.
35 years.
But,
get out of here.
The movie is not trying to make a statement in the final scene of the movie.
Right.
But it's just funny to me. So basically, what I'm saying is Blast from the Past is like basically The Wedding Singer, but it's also kind of Demolition Man in terms of the visual strategy. Like, it's about this middle place. It's about this amalgamation of visual strategy. It's about the past and the future and what's the way out, because they're both flawed, by supporting each other and picking up each other's flaws, much like this movie, much like in the way that most rom-coms shoot. Demolition Man's a rom-com is my point. Okay. No, it's a lot of movies, obviously. And I think that you may not have noticed it on any of these titles I'm mentioning, but there's like real work there. It's a lot of moving pieces and choices made quickly, and the departments have to do them regardless of budget or like what the content is. And they work their ass off to do a thing. So that's cool.
Yeah.
That's all.
We're going to be calling this phenomenon in movies the Demolition Man synthesis from this point forward.
Yeah. The Demolition Man synthesis.
Yeah, I mean, because every movie does some of this because because of the 3
it's
act.
Hollywood's old bag.
Yeah, it's a 3-act structure thing. It's like first act is one thing, second act is the opposite of that thing usually.
Yeah,
and third act
A prime. Rondo format is how I've heard it in music.
Third act is the synthesis of the two.
Something like that. Yeah.
I mean, and you've made this point, and it's great. You know, it's really good.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's not my point. It's just an idea that's out there, and people use it, right?
It's going to be your point if you decide to stick with the Demolition Man synthesis as the term for it.
Oh, you mean the DMS?
It's yours forever now. You did it, baby.
It's yours forever. Just give it an acronym.
Hey, Abe.
Son, and it's yours forever. What?
Hey, Abe, this was great, and I hated this movie, Abe.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
We don't have
like
to.
A bit?
We can.
I want to know what are the specific reasons?
I'll tell you why. By the way, so not a bit. That was you did a great job showing the work the director did, because it does redeem the film in my eyes a little bit. Wow. It really does, because I didn't think about those choices. I was really hung up on the fact that the director, in my mind, didn't really decide what Brendan Fraser's character's problem was. Now, the premise of the movie suggests his problem is that he's locked back in time, so he's got this old way of doing things. But what it ends up being is that he's socially inept and sort of not very intelligent about what people mean when they say, and that he's a goober. You know, like he's a goober, and those aren't actually.
He's pretty smart.
Well,
he just
no,
doesn't
he's
know.
book smart. He's not social smart, and I guess that fits the bunker thing. But his problem is not just restricted to what would happen if he was in a bunker. Like, he's actually kind of a weird alien socially and emotionally that over time becomes a normal person. But because of that, I feel like every scene with him, you don't really know what kind of jokes they're going to be, and the jokes don't always work. Because it's like, oh yeah, he's not 60s weird, he's just weird. You know? And I feel like he didn't always know, so he kind of sold it with like the, thumbs up winking thing. And that's not his fault. That's a director problem, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I do think there's more to the character than you're painting.
100% there is. 100%.
I see where you're going. It's like pretty one note, and there's...
And an unclear note.
There's no room for it to grow, the comedy, in turn.
Yes. Like, I would say...
I think that's romantic comedies, though. They're not really comedies.
I mean, they can be.
Are they?
They're not comedies like The Wedding Singer,
I think in the 2000s, we started to get, like, amalgams of the rom-com. Like, we got, like, raunchy rom-coms.
That's true.
And we got, like, more funny Apatow rom-coms.
Right around this time, actually.
And Yeah, in like 2005-ish,
if you go back to like the late 80s with things like When Harry Met Sally or whatever, which by the way is not the first rom-com.
Those are also those are great examples out of my theory. But I'm thinking of like, I don't know, the Matthew McConaughey kind of.
That's all late 90s
rom-coms.
Right? Late 90s, early 2000s.
That's all late 90s. Yeah, that era was not like the jokes were like accidental.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
The jokes are just like the discomfort of two people who want to fuck,
it's not super.
It's not
funny.
really like jokes,
right? It's not super funny.
There'd be a comic relief friend. That's Four Weddings and a Funeral kind of.
But it's a writing problem ultimately, right? Like yes. Again, I come back. Like most of these movies, I think a fair counterpoint to them is When Harry Met Sally, because When Harry Met Sally is not an expensive movie. It's not. It's actually a very simple movie in so many ways, and the thing that makes it great is the writing. Like the two actors are good, but the writing is really good. And a competent director, like Rob Reiner's very competent.
Of course.
And
of
it's
course,
funny.
Though, but
you're laughing at it. Like you laugh at the bits when they show up. You laugh at them. In this movie, you're like, okay, okay.
That was a different time.
10 years.
Like,
was only 10 years later.
That's true. Yeah, it's like 80, late 80s,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, and forgive me, I understand that not every rom-com is funny like you laugh at it, but this movie wanted to be funny, I think.
It wanted, and yeah, there's like set deck jokes and stuff like that.
Christopher Walken is very often
he's a mad scientist.
Off the leash in this. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
totally.
And so they're doing bits where he's like catching fish, and it's like, I don't know how to describe it. Like incidental comedy.
Right.
You know?
It's like
accidental or incidental. Just like, okay, yeah, this is a weird thing to look at, but that is a lot of movies too. It's you're right. It's called not being funny.
The jokes are not. The jokes are there, but they're not super well written, and they're sort of reliant on Brendan Fraser to be a funny guy, and he is a funny guy. He's a very charming guy, but like he's not Will Ferrell. You know what I mean? Like.
Well, right.
But see, that's what Will Ferrell can do for you.
He's not Jim Carrey in the same era as well.
Those two guys, that's what they can do for you, is you can put them in a story like that and give them a bit that doesn't even totally add up, and they're just funny guys, so they make it work. And I feel like Brendan Fraser is just a good actor who has a good personality and is funny with good writing. So he can't make it work, you know?
Brendan Fraser is very good. Like, to me, like he's got physical comedy chops.
Yeah.
And he has like some sounds that he does that are very funny. I'm looking at you, Monkey Bone.
You know, you know what he's like? He's like Jimmy Stewart. Like he's similar. Yeah. He's a Jimmy Stewart type. Yeah. You know,
he's kind of like he can bumble with the best of them, but he can also do the like. Have you seen Bedazzled?
Mm-hmm. I almost brought that up. I was like, that'd be a fun movie to do.
They put him through the ringer, man. He pulls it off. That movie sucks. Don't get me wrong.
I think that's how I feel about all his movies, except for Encino Man and The Mummy.
Right, but he's not like an improv comedian.
Well, and I feel like the scenes only really would have worked for an improv comedian.
Because stand-up took over comedy.
Totally, man. 100%. I just want to point out that that's my critique of the movie and why I didn't enjoy it as much as I could have, because it's like this is not a good use of Brendan Fraser, you know, or Fraser, whatever. Like I think there's a good version of him. We've seen it several times, and he can populate any role that's well written that requires him to be funny and charming and athletic and everything. He's got a lot of tools
for sure
as an actor. He's got a lot going for him. By contrast, forgive me, Alicia Silverstone is pretty rough in this, right? Like this is not a good outing for her. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
about that.
Neither of them have many, like you mentioned. The script isn't like it's not bad, but it's nothing to write home about. Right? Like
there's that.
It does the job, and there's some jokes, and they're half competent. Like they didn't make me laugh, but they didn't make me.
The script has some bad.
I guess
the script has some bad decision-making moments.
We know she's capable of better.
Yes.
But that better is type.
Yes.
Cher is singular in a way, right?
I think her energy,
a performance that stands alone.
I agree. It's sort of like, you know what's comparable to it to me? It's what I liked about Zooey Deschanel and New Girl. Like, I think Alicia Silverstone has a similar energy, which is like a little bit of like, all right. Like, there's a little bit of that energy to her that's very funny and charming. And when used correctly, it makes an incredible character. Like, Cher was an incredible character. There's a reason we love that movie so much. It's because Alicia Silverstone's like kind of half committal vibe fits it. You know, like it nails it. Whereas
interesting. That's an interesting read of that movie because we've talked about that.
And I love that movie.
I definitely. Oh yeah, for sure. But I would characterize like what I like about Cher from the like absolute like headstrong, like strength to a fault.
I agree with that.
Like the fact that she's like, it is this way.
I agree with that. I like that.
I do not care.
That's what I like about the character of Cher. What I like about the performance of Cher is Alicia Silverstone's sort of like
the Valley Girl bit.
But it's not Valley Girl like she's dumb. It's Valley Girl like she's not that invested in a lot of these bits, and it works.
I mean, they do make her dumb. They literally make her dumb.
But that's not who I think Alicia Silverstone is.
That's not what you're saying. Yeah. That part of the trope is the important part that characterizes the performance. Correct. I see what you're saying.
And in this movie, she's not really connected to a lot of the decisions the character has to make. Partly because I think they don't always make sense. Like, I think this character flip-flops 50 times for reasons that are like, well, what does she actually want? And I think sneaky, they didn't know.
Rom-coms usually use serendipity. That's like a theory I have, that I'm tired of all the serendipity, right. Especially in this kind of stuff. But rom-coms typically do that, right? Because they say, like, we keep meeting here. Or it's like, now I have
Kismet.
To like work with this person. Yeah. And in this movie, it's very transactional.
True.
From the get-go, they say like, oh, you don't like me? That's fine. But I still need your help. Do you think you can help me for money? And
by money, we mean baseball cards.
Let's, and then that's now how the timeline of the movie works, is until the job's done.
I think
which is transactional and not very like interested in what love would want, in terms of like, this is not a movie where they could go like, all right, and then they have a falling out so they don't talk for like,
which is such a key trope, though. It's such a key trope, and you're right about that. Again, counterpoint, and I understand they're not the same era, but When Harry Met Sally, the way they get around the problem in that movie is that Meg Ryan doesn't understand her own feelings. Like, that's who that character is. I don't understand my own feelings.
That's true. That's a lot more.
I'm in denial about that.
Of a complex thought.
Well, that's the only way it works.
I mean, they give credit to the writers for at least they do give her the self-realization arc in this, which is that I was denying my feelings because I thought it should be a certain way. He's like a homeless person. And I can't have that,
and she just,
which is a real basic ass kind of suggestion, but they give her the moment where she says, that is stupid. Yeah. I'm going to go run and get him.
It's just like partly writing. It's that scene where she decides I believe him instead of after she just called the psychiatrist. Is like, why? Mm-hmm. He's acting crazy right now. This actually would reinforce the thing you thought before. Mm-hmm. So that's not well done. I feel like, and again, I like Alicia Silverstone a lot. I feel like in this movie, she didn't really seam those transitions together. Like, I didn't get a feeling of like, this is who this character is, and everything that comes out of that character is going to stay consistent throughout, even if she grows. Whereas I did get that from Brendan Fraser.
That's, I think you may have a point as to why all the kiddies aren't running out to the rafters and screaming, blast from the past.
Well, a lot of
blast from the past.
Maybe a lot of these great rom-com performances, especially for women, they have a very, like, the actress has a really grounded, strong sense of who the character is. And everything that happens to them, you know how they're going to feel about it because you know who they are. It's why we liked Pretty Woman so much. I mean, that and Julia Roberts was like, wow. But she was really grounded in that movie. Like, you knew exactly who she was. And all the funny bits in it, I'm going to put funny in quotes because it's okay, felt very authentic to her,
Yeah. I mean, have you seen the what's the Batman she's in? Batman and Robin?
I've seen it.
Batman and Robin?
I feel like that's just horrible casting for her, right? Like, I don't see her as a superhero. That's just not who she is, right? Am I wrong?
I'm just no. I mean, nothing is. You're not wrong because nothing is right.
But it's
about
like
that
casting
movie,
Owen Wilson
Arnold Schwarzenegger
as Batman. It's like I don't see that, man.
Yeah. Uma Thurman's good in it. She makes a meal out of poison ivy.
She does their best. She can.
Isn't she? Is poison ivy's in that?
That's right. Yeah, Batman and Robin.
I'm getting them all. No, mixed
you didn't.
up.
You named all the right things.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. But she ain't good in that. Is what I'm saying. Silverstone ain't good.
I mean, there's a reason I think she like disappeared because I think that like Cher is like a really good character for her. Obviously, she's an extremely beautiful likable person, but like that doesn't make her a good actress, you know, like, and we don't have those follow-up roles that prove her range. She's a little bit like Denise Richards, you know, or like there's 1,000 people like
Denise
this.
Richards was never like self-aware funny though.
Are you sure? I mean,
was she in like a scary movie or something like that?
She's been in scary movies.
I don't know enough to talk about.
She's done stuff that is because I think these are the parts she could get.
I mean, Starship Troopers, but like that
Wild Things.
Here's the thing: Starship Troopers is like Big Lebowski, casting Tara Reid,
right,
or casting like non-actors in general.
Well, Tara Reid's not a non-actor, but I get what you mean. Yeah.
But it's like they're used as a type.
Well, that's who she is.
They're not used.
That's who Alicia.
A one-dimensional person. Yeah. So you're arguing that Alicia Silverstone is a little bit one-dimensional for there's not. She couldn't pull off the multi-dimensional aspect of this character, because I wouldn't say that this character is particularly.
She didn't bring
complex,
anything to
so
it.
That's probably true.
Yeah, she didn't bring anything to it that would have made it complex. You know, I'm not saying what she can and can't do. Like, I don't know her. I've never worked with her. I'm saying the way she was cast here suggests that to me. But you know, like, there's been so many stories about actors being typecast and it's not finding them.
One of Cher's affectations is, like in Clueless, is like the one-dimensionality of that character, right? So like, I think it's absolutely for comedy, especially for comedic beats, but probably in general, I would argue, she that's the type that she will play.
That's what she was getting.
That's all.
For a reason, because that was a home run. But I worry it was a little bit of a Napoleon Dynamite problem, where
she's playing it up.
Well, they were. After. She actually had a really strong skill, and then she was sort of typecast because of that skill. But they didn't keep writing roles that used that skill,
right?
So like it didn't work. You know?
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right, because like you look at that, or that's a possibility, because like you look at like, what is it, Blades of Glory or some shit?
Yeah, whatever that one he was in.
You know, like he's still doing Napoleon Dynamite, and you're like, oh boy.
Well, because I think they tried to do things that weren't Napoleon Dynamite, but were adjacent, and it's like, oh no, Napoleon Dynamite was a really perfect usage for him.
Yeah, do the voice. Yeah. Do the voice.
Well, see, it's like two things, right? Some people get typecast, which I do think Alicia Silverstone got typecast. And they can't.
I think that's probably.
They can't break out of that because nobody will let them. Right? That's a thing. But then some people, they're actually really good in this one. Like, there's a perfect role for them that uses them exactly the way they should be used, and highlights their skills. And then when they're put into adjacent type roles, they're not as good in them. And it's like, why? And it's because this one director understood this actor and how to use this actor. You know.
I'd say that's right. I think it's a combination of typecast, being slightly adjacent, the uncanny valley of, character, and probably no one's talent is endless.
No one's talent is endless, but she might be a Mark Wahlberg. You know, like, I think Mark Wahlberg is.
What does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you. I think Mark Wahlberg can be fantastic with the right director. Like, Scorsese has proven.
Like in a Punch Drunk Love way.
Was he in Punch Drunk Love?
Like, no. I'm saying like Adam Sandler. Like, he had like a new echelon to his game. Is that what you're saying? Because like, I don't think that Marky Mark is ever not doing Marky Mark. Like, he reminds me a little bit of like Steven Seagal.
Well, Steven Seagal is a lot worse than Mark Wahlberg.
Of course.
So Mark Wahlberg has shown me that there are times where he can be a great actor. And I'm specifically thinking of The Departed and a couple other roles like that. But The Departed's the one where it's like, Scorsese proved this guy can do it. Yeah. He has something when he wants to.
But not range in the way that you're
I'm not talking about range.
To me, Departed.
I'm talking about, so like, then when you put Mark Wahlberg in roles that are not like clear, that are not great usages of that talent, he comes off kind of not, you don't believe it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work.
Shooter.
Yeah. It doesn't work. And I think Alicia Silverstone might be similar in that way.
The Infinite.
I didn't see that, and I was not gonna.
Is it The Infinite? Or
I
is
think
it
it's
just
Infinite.
I think it's just
I haven't even
Infinite.
seen Uncharted yet because
Ooh,
I
wanna
do
see that.
too, but I'm also like, man, they really changed what these characters are with this casting.
Are they going into tombs? Is there treasure there?
Well, right. It's like the movies need
All
to
I
have
need
their
to
own
know.
identity, and I'm all for Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is what Uncharted is, you know?
Ooh. Yeah, I just want to know if there's puzzles.
Is he going to draw stuff in his little journal?
Is he gonna figure out a puzzle in stone?
Is it going to be history-based puzzles?
Is he gonna press the stone in the wall and then the thing's gonna happen and stuff?
I mean, if we were still at Cracked, at some
Ooh.
point we would have made a sketch about like like some ancient race of people that are building all these traps and puzzles. You know what I mean? Like they're so stupid.
Yeah, that's the stuff that
Yeah.
must have happened for like
Yeah.
I don't know.
We didn't do it.
Fictional. We probably would have done like a fictional
Yeah.
stuff that must have happened, which is
It's not
I
what
don't
that it's not the premise
like
of that.
movie based. Yeah, that's not the. They would just make a new show
Yeah.
of it, so don't listen to me. But like, yeah, we would do some way, like, but not really, because that's not the way it was going. So,
No, it
that's
was
not how,
going the bad way. Is where it was going.
There wasn't
the way
even
where
money
we
in
were
sketch
failing.
in 2015. In 2015, there was no money in sketch.
I beg
Get
to
out of
differ. We
here.
spent
with
like
your antiquated.
we
Yeah,
spent
we
a lot
did.
of money in sketch in 2015, which we shouldn't have.
And as we learned,
That's how jobs go
Not
away.
a wise business decision. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
Anyway, I'm not trying to shit on the movie just to be mean, but I like because we're talking about directing. I do think the director struggled to make the characters coherent and clear. Like I think he struggled there. And it's like, you know, you want to blame the actors a little bit, but I always bring that stuff back to the director because the director has to say, yes, I believe these transitions and they work for me. And I don't think they did in a lot of cases here.
Yeah,
you know,
I think it was one of those rom-com. The 90s, you know, had some of these. I'm trying to think of them, but it just, I don't know.
There's a bunch of them. My best friend's wedding.
There's a bunch of them, and if you list them out, like I feel like you can. A lot of them were premise first.
That's true. Yeah,
you know, like instead of character and like love interest first. You know, I mean, I'm gonna argue like the Matthew McConaughey's and the Sandra Bullock ones. You know, those ones
she's
were
a
like
really good actor by comparison, though.
that. But the whole point, or like the Julia Roberts ones, like the whole point is just let them be like handsome and charming, and then let them be handsome and charming, and then let the faces hit the other faces, let their skulls mash, and it's just like sometimes there's like but this one's unique and a little funny because it's about like this crazy concept of, you know, being transported into the future.
I feel like Miss Congeniality is a comparable film in the sense that the premise of it is not explicitly a love story, which Blast from the Past is not explicitly a love story.
Congeniality, the one where she's an FBI
and she
agent?
goes to the pageant. That's a fun rom-com because that's kind of what it is, right? It's basically a rom-com.
Right.
And she's fantastic in that movie. You know? She's also fantastic in While You Were Sleeping, another very dumb, similar to this, actually, premise, right?
But not her best rom-com. I'll tell you which.
I'm ready.
Her best rom-com.
Is it Demolition Man?
It's Demolition Man, baby. All right. I think we can probably call it there, right?
Yeah, you did it. Finger guns to you.
Abe wins this round, if anyone's counting, and I hope you are.
Me too. I hope.
Thank you for listening to me meander about my stupid thoughts.
No, this was great.
And just Abe splaying all over you.
I don't like the all over me part, but I enjoy the Abe splaining.
Just so much.
That's it. Fuck this. Bye.
This has been a Small Beans endeavor. We're a bunch of pals who make podcasts, sketches, music, web series, and movies. The Beans always have new ideas percolating, so make sure to check us out at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's patreon.com/smallbeans, where you can browse all of our current and past content, see what we've got planned in the future, and learn how your support can help the Small Beans grow into huge, giant monster beans. If you enjoyed this content module, please like, rate, subscribe, or tell a friend about us. We love you.